He bought the ring 6 months early. He hid it in his sock drawer. He planned the proposal down to the minute. The restaurant, the music, the words he would say. 3 weeks before the date he chose, she sat him down. She said she loved him. She said he was the best man she ever met. Then she said she was leaving. He did nothing wrong. That was the problem. This video reveals what Arthur Schopenhauer discovered about female desire that most men will never accept. A truth so brutal that polite society pretends it does not exist. A truth that explains why good men finish last, why devotion creates distance, why the man who gives everything receives nothing in return. Schopenhauer understood something about human nature that modern psychology still struggles to admit. He saw that desire does not operate on logic. It operates on forces buried so deep in the human mind that most people never see them working. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why women leave good men. Not because those men fail, but because they succeed at the wrong things. You will learn the 5 laws that govern female desire at its deepest level. Laws that Schopenhauer, Robert Greene, and Machiavelli documented centuries ago. Laws that still control every relationship you will ever have. Stay until the end. What you learn here will change how you see attraction forever. Let me tell you about the man I described. His name was Daniel. I watched his relationship collapse in real time. He was everything society tells men to be. Supportive, available, consistent, kind. He remembered every anniversary. He listened when she spoke. He made her feel safe. And she left him for a man who did none of those things. Daniel asked me what went wrong. He listed everything he did right. He could not understand how doing everything right produced the wrong result. Here is what I told him. Schopenhauer wrote that the human will operates beneath reason. It does not care about fairness. It does not reward effort. It responds only to specific triggers that evolution programmed into us over millions of years. The will wants what it wants. Logic cannot negotiate with it. Kindness cannot persuade it. Only understanding can work with it. Daniel made a mistake that millions of good men make every day. He believed that attraction works like a transaction. Give enough, and you receive in return. Be good enough, and you earn love. Prove your value, and she stays. But Schopenhauer saw through this illusion. He wrote that desire dies the moment it is satisfied. The wanting creates the energy. The having drains it. Think about that. Really, think about it. When Daniel gave his woman everything she wanted, he killed her desire for him. Not because she was evil, not because she was ungrateful, but because satisfied desire cannot sustain itself. It needs tension to survive. It needs uncertainty to breathe. It needs something still out of reach. Robert Greene made this principle famous in The Art of Seduction. He called it strategic withdrawal. The moment you become too available, too predictable, too safe, attraction begins to die. Machiavelli understood this same truth applied to power. He wrote that men who are too easily won are never truly valued. What costs nothing is worth nothing. The prince who gives favors freely finds his subjects expect more, while respecting him less. This is not cynicism. This is observation. This is what happens when you watch human behavior without the filter of what should happen. Daniel was generous because he thought generosity created attraction. He was consistent because he thought consistency built trust. He was available because he thought availability proved love. But female desire does not reward these things. It responds to something else entirely. Schopenhauer identified the core problem. He wrote that most men mistake the mask for the face. They hear what women say they want. They ignore what women actually respond to, and the gap between those two things destroys them. Every woman will tell you she wants a good man, a man who treats her well, a man who respects her, a man who makes her feel valued. She is not lying. She believes this completely. But belief and behavior are different things. Schopenhauer saw that humans rarely understand their own motivations. The will operates in shadow. It moves us toward outcomes we cannot explain and away from things we think we want. The woman who leaves a good man feels confused by her own choice. She cannot articulate why she lost attraction. She only knows that something inside her shifted. The feeling changed. The spark disappeared, and no amount of his goodness could bring it back. This is the paradox that good men face. The very qualities that make them good also make them unattractive. Not always, not to everyone, but often enough that the pattern cannot be ignored. In the next segment, I will reveal the first of Schopenhauer's 5 laws. The law that explains why comfort kills chemistry, why safety destroys passion, and why the man who makes her feel secure often loses to the man who makes her feel alive. This is not about becoming a bad man. This is about understanding how desire actually works beneath the surface we see. Schopenhauer wrote that truth is the most dangerous weapon, and the truth about female desire has been hidden for too long. Schopenhauer made an observation that changed philosophy forever. He noticed that humans are never satisfied. Not truly. Not permanently. The moment we get what we want something else. The goal achieved becomes boring. The prize won loses its shine. The woman conquered stops being interesting. He called this the pendulum of pain and boredom. We swing between wanting what we lack and being bored by what we have. There is no middle ground. There is no lasting peace. There is only the endless cycle of desire, satisfaction, and fresh desire. This is the first law, the law of satisfied desire. It states that attraction cannot survive total satisfaction. The energy of wanting requires something still out of reach. Remove the gap between desire and fulfillment, and you remove the force that holds everything together. Let me show you how this destroys good men. When Daniel began dating his woman, there was natural uncertainty. He did not know if she liked him. He did not know if she would stay. This uncertainty created tension, and tension created attraction. Every text message carried weight. Every date contained possibility. Every moment together felt charged with something unspoken. But Daniel was a good man. He wanted to remove her uncertainty. He wanted her to feel secure. So he told her exactly how he felt. He promised his commitment. He eliminated every doubt. And the moment he succeeded, something began to die. Robert Greene observed this pattern across centuries of seduction. He noted that mystery sustains interest. When someone cannot fully read you, they keep trying. Their mind stays engaged. Their emotions stay active. But the moment they solve the puzzle, their attention moves elsewhere. This is not cruelty. This is psychology. The brain is wired to pay attention to incomplete patterns, unfinished stories, unsolved problems. The moment completion arrives, the brain moves on to the next thing. Schopenhauer took this further. He argued that desire itself is the source of all suffering. We chase what we want. We get what we want. Then we discover that having provides less pleasure than wanting did. Think about any goal you achieved. The promotion, the purchase, the relationship milestone. How long did the satisfaction last? Days? Weeks? Then something else became important. Something else demanded your attention. This is the will at work. It uses desire to keep us moving. It never intended for us to arrive and rest. Arrival is just the signal to want something new. The good man misunderstands this completely. He thinks his job is to satisfy his woman, to meet her needs, to give her peace. He does not realize that total peace is the enemy of passion. Machiavelli wrote about this in terms of power. He observed that subjects who receive too much grow entitled rather than grateful. They begin to expect what they once appreciated. Then they begin to resent what they once treasured. The generous prince finds himself surrounded by people who take him for granted. The same pattern plays out in relationships. Daniel gave his woman certainty. She knew where she stood. She knew he would never leave. She knew he would always be there. And knowing all of this, she stopped feeling anything about it. Contrast this with her previous relationship. A man who kept her guessing. A man who sometimes pulled away. A man who never gave her complete security. She was unhappy with that man. She felt anxious and uncertain. She questioned herself constantly. But she was never bored. She was never indifferent. She was always engaged, always feeling, always alive in the relationship. Schopenhauer would have predicted this exactly. The anxious desire produced more psychological energy than the satisfied security. The will responds to wanting, not having. Now, I am not telling you to torture women with uncertainty. That misses the point entirely. The lesson is more subtle. The good man must understand that attraction requires incompleteness, not cruelty, not games, but genuine tension that keeps both people reaching toward something. This means having a life beyond the relationship. It means maintaining mystery that cannot be fully solved. It means being someone who continues growing, changing, evolving. Someone who cannot be completely known because you are still becoming who you will be. Nietzsche built on Schopenhauer's foundation with his concept of becoming. He argued that the superior man is never finished. He is always in process, always overcoming, always creating himself anew. This man cannot bore a woman because he never stops moving. There is always something new to discover, always some part of him that remains just out of reach. The static good man offers everything he has on day one. The evolving man reveals himself gradually, endlessly, because the revelation never completes. Do you see the difference? One creates the conditions for satisfied desire. The other creates the conditions for sustained desire. One leads to boredom. The other leads to continued attraction. Freud understood this when he wrote about the pleasure principle. He observed that anticipation often exceeds experience. The fantasy of a thing provides more pleasure than the thing itself. This is why the chase excites us and the capture disappoints. The good man ends the chase too quickly. He hands over the keys to himself with no sense of timing. He does not understand that the chase itself was part of what she wanted. In the next segment, I will reveal the second law, the one that explains why women leave men who need them, why neediness repels even when love attracts, and what Schopenhauer discovered about the fatal imbalance that kills relationships slowly from the inside. There is a moment in every dying relationship when the balance shifts. One person becomes the giver. The other becomes the taker. One person needs more. The other feels suffocated by that need. Schopenhauer identified this pattern in his writing on human connection. He observed that people are drawn to completeness and repelled by emptiness. The person who radiates self-sufficiency attracts. The person who radiates need pushes away. This is the second law, the law of psychological surplus. It states that attraction flows toward those who appear to need it least. The man who seems complete without her becomes interesting. The man who seems incomplete without her becomes a burden. Let me explain why this happens at the deepest level. Schopenhauer argued that the will drives us toward life and away from death. Not physical death necessarily, but psychological death, the death of energy, the death of vitality, the death of forward motion. When a man demonstrates need, he signals a kind of psychological weakness. Something in him is missing. Something in him depends on external validation to survive. He is not whole on his own. He requires her to complete him. This triggers an ancient warning in the female mind. Evolution programmed women to evaluate men for strength. Not just physical strength, psychological strength, emotional strength, the strength to survive and provide without collapsing under pressure. The needy man fails this evaluation. His need reveals a gap in his foundation, and that gap makes him a liability rather than an asset. Robert Greene called this the law of repulsion. He wrote that neediness creates a negative force field around a person. Others sense it and pull away instinctively. Not because they are cruel, but because need is associated with taking rather than giving. The good man often falls into this trap without realizing it. He shows his devotion openly. He expresses his need honestly. He believes that vulnerability creates connection. Sometimes it does, in the right doses, at the right moments, between people who have already established mutual desire. But too much vulnerability too soon creates the wrong dynamic. It places the burden of your emotional well-being on another person. It tells them that your happiness depends on their response. This is enormous pressure, and pressure creates resistance. Machiavelli saw this in political terms. He noted that princes who showed weakness invited attack. The moment rivals sensed need or desperation, they moved to exploit it. The strong prince maintained an image of self-sufficiency, even when resources ran low. The same principle applies to attraction. The man who appears complete attracts interest. The man who appears desperate repels it. Daniel fell into this trap gradually. At first he was confident and grounded. He had his own life, his own goals, his own sense of worth. His woman was drawn to this solidity. She felt safe leaning on something that would not collapse. But as the relationship progressed, Daniel shifted his center. He began organizing his life around her. He began depending on her approval for his sense of self. He began needing her in ways that felt romantic to him, but felt burdensome to her. He did not notice the shift. He thought he was showing love. He thought devotion meant making her the center of his world. But she felt the weight increasing. Every day she carried more of his emotional load. Every day she became more responsible for his happiness. And every day the attraction dimmed a little more. Schopenhauer would have recognized this pattern instantly. He wrote that the will seeks to preserve itself above all else. When someone drains our energy, the will moves us away from them. When someone adds to our energy, the will moves us toward them. The needy man drains. He takes more than he gives, not materially, emotionally. His need is a constant withdrawal from the emotional bank account. Jung expanded on this concept with his work on psychological projection. He observed that people who have not developed internal wholeness project their missing pieces onto others. They see in their partner what they lack in themselves, and they cling to that partner as if losing them means losing a part of themselves. This clinging creates the suffocation that kills attraction. The partner feels trapped by a need they cannot satisfy. No matter how much they give, the needy person wants more. Because the need comes from an internal emptiness that no external source can fill. The solution is not to pretend you do not care. Fake indifference fools no one. Women read emotional truth with devastating accuracy. The solution is to actually develop the internal resources that make neediness unnecessary. To build a life that would be meaningful with or without a specific person in it. To create value within yourself that does not depend on external validation. Epictetus taught this 2,000 years ago. He wrote that we suffer not from events, but from our judgments about events. The man who judges his worth based on a woman's response will always suffer. The man who judges his worth based on his own character cannot be shaken by any external outcome. Marcus Aurelius practiced this philosophy daily. He reminded himself that nothing outside his own mind could truly harm him. That his peace depended on choices he made, not circumstances he faced. This mindset creates the psychological surplus that attracts. Not as a trick or technique, as a genuine state of being. The man who is truly complete within himself radiates something that neediness can never fake. In the next segment, I reveal the third law, the one that explains why challenge sustains attraction while comfort destroys it, and what Schopenhauer understood about the essential role of struggle in human desire. Schopenhauer observed something that most people find uncomfortable. He noticed that humans do not actually want permanent happiness. We think we do. We say we do. We pursue it with everything we have. But when we get it, something strange happens. We feel empty, restless, like something important is missing. This is the third law, the law of necessary resistance. It states that desire requires obstacles to survive. Remove all resistance, and you remove the energy that drives attraction. The relationship without challenge becomes the relationship without spark. Let me explain why this matters for the good man. When Daniel first pursued his woman, she made him work. Not through games or manipulation, just through the natural uncertainty of early attraction. He had to prove himself. He had to demonstrate value. He had to overcome the resistance of her caution. This resistance made the pursuit meaningful. Every small victory felt significant. Every step forward carried weight. The difficulty created value. But Daniel was a good man. His goal was to remove difficulty from her life. He wanted everything to be easy, smooth, comfortable. He thought removing obstacles showed love. He did not understand that he was also removing the very thing that kept her engaged. Schopenhauer wrote extensively about the role of suffering in human experience. He argued that complete satisfaction is impossible because the will always creates new desires. But more than that, he observed that the struggle toward a goal provides more meaning than the goal itself. Think about your own experience. The accomplishments that matter most came through difficulty. The easy wins feel hollow. The hard-won victories feel real. Relationships follow the same pattern. The love that came easily feels different from the love that required effort. Not necessarily worse, but less anchored, less proven. Robert Greene built his understanding of power on this foundation. He wrote that humans devalue what comes too easily. The thing that cost nothing feels worth nothing, but the thing that required sacrifice becomes precious. The good man offers himself freely. No cost, no effort required. And the woman devalues what she did not have to earn. Contrast this with men who maintain a certain distance, not coldness, not cruelty, just the sense that their approval must be won, that their time has value, that their commitment is not automatic. These men create the resistance that good men remove, and that resistance keeps attraction alive. Machiavelli understood this in terms of political strategy. He noted that the prince who grants requests immediately loses respect. But the prince who makes supplicants wait, who requires them to demonstrate worthiness, maintains his position of power. This is not about playing games. This is about understanding that value perception depends on accessibility. The rare thing seems valuable. The common thing seems worthless. Nietzsche took this principle deeper with his concept of self-overcoming. He argued that the highest human life involves constant struggle against one's own limitations. The man who challenges himself becomes attractive because his standards demonstrate value. When Daniel stopped challenging himself, he stopped being interesting. He settled into comfort. He became predictable. His woman could see exactly who he would be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And she could not imagine spending that long with someone who had stopped growing. The man who continues struggling attracts because his journey is not complete. There are mountains he still wants to climb, goals he still pursues, a version of himself he is still becoming. This creates natural resistance within the relationship, not conflict or drama, but the healthy tension of two people who have their own paths, their own challenges, their own growth. Jung wrote about this in terms of individuation. He described the lifelong process of becoming fully oneself. The person engaged in this process has energy and purpose that extends beyond any relationship. This independence actually strengthens the relationship because neither person becomes entirely dependent on the other. The good man often abandons his own journey to focus on the relationship. He thinks this shows dedication. He thinks putting her first demonstrates love, but she watches him shrink. She watches his world narrow. She watches him transform from a man with ambition into a man whose ambition is only her. And she loses respect for what she sees. Schopenhauer would say that Daniel eliminated the resistance that gave his pursuit meaning. Without obstacles, the will has nothing to push against. Without challenge, desire has nothing to fuel itself with. The solution is not to create artificial obstacles. That manipulation backfires quickly. The solution is to maintain genuine challenges in your own life, to remain a man in process, to never arrive at a final destination, because the journey itself is the point. Freud connected this to his theory of libido. He argued that psychic energy needs channels for expression. When all channels close, the energy turns destructive. When healthy channels remain open, the energy creates life. The good man who abandons his challenges closes the channels. His energy has nowhere to go except into the relationship. And that concentrated focus overwhelms rather than attracts. The man with ongoing struggles distributes his energy across multiple channels. His relationship gets attention, but not all of it. This distribution feels healthy rather than suffocating. In the next segment, I reveal the fourth law, the one Schopenhauer considered most dangerous, the truth about female evaluation that society refuses to discuss openly. Schopenhauer made an observation that earned him hatred during his lifetime. He noticed that love is not blind, it is strategic. Operating below conscious awareness, a selection process runs constantly, evaluating, comparing, measuring one option against another. This is the fourth law, the law of relative position. It states that attraction depends not on absolute qualities, but on perceived rank. The man's value is always measured against other available options. His position in the hierarchy determines his desirability. This sounds brutal. It is brutal. But ignoring it does not make it false. Let me show you how this destroyed Daniel. When they first met, Daniel held a strong relative position. He was confident, accomplished, ambitious. Among the men in her social circle, he stood out. His perceived value was high because comparison favored him. But comparison never stops. And Daniel stopped competing. He assumed the relationship was permanent. He assumed his position was secure. He focused all his energy on her and stopped investing in himself. Meanwhile, her world continued presenting alternatives. Men at work, men at social events, Men who still carried the energy Daniel had abandoned. She did not consciously compare. She did not make spreadsheets or lists, but her unconscious mind registered the differences, the gaps in energy, the contrasts in ambition, the men who still burned, and the man who had settled. Schopenhauer wrote about the will-to-life driving selection. He argued that beneath romantic feeling lies a biological calculation. The organism seeks the best possible genetic outcome. The mind performs this calculation without conscious awareness. This sounds cold because it is cold. But understanding cold truth gives power that warm delusion never can. Robert Greene documented this pattern across centuries of seduction and power. He observed that people constantly reassess their options. Loyalty exists, but it exists alongside ongoing evaluation. The moment better options appear clearly superior, loyalty weakens. This is why the good man cannot afford complacency. His position is never permanent. His rank is always relative. The competitors he ignores are the competitors who eventually win. Machiavelli saw this clearly in political terms. He wrote that the prince must constantly demonstrate strength to maintain his position. The moment weakness shows, rivals move. The position he thought was secure crumbles overnight. Daniel thought love was unconditional. He thought his early victories guaranteed future success. He thought he could rest. He was wrong about all of it. His woman did not leave because she stopped loving him. In some ways, she still loved him when she walked away. She left because his perceived value had fallen too far. The gap between who he had been and who he had become was too wide. She could not articulate this. She only knew that her feelings had changed, that the man in front of her no longer stirred what the man she met once stirred. She blamed herself. She blamed timing. She blamed everything except the real cause. The real cause was relative position. Daniel had fallen in the hierarchy, not objectively. He was still a good person, but subjectively, compared to the other options her life presented. Nietzsche would recognize this as the will to power expressing itself through attraction. The organism seeks power, seeks advantage, seeks the highest available position. When a partner represents decline rather than ascent, the will resists. This does not mean women only want rich or famous men. That misunderstands the law completely. Position is measured across many dimensions: ambition, confidence, energy, direction, growth. A man can hold high position with modest means if he carries himself with purpose. The good man often sacrifices these dimensions for comfort. He stops striving because striving feels uncomfortable. He stops growing because growth requires effort. He stops competing because competition feels against his values. And his position falls accordingly. Jung wrote about the shadow containing the aspects of ourselves we reject. The good man often pushes ambition and drive into his shadow because they feel selfish. He identifies as kind, supportive, nurturing. He disowns the competitive energy that once made him attractive. But the shadow does not disappear. It only hides. And the qualities he rejects are often the qualities his woman unconsciously seeks. The integrated man holds both. He can be kind and ambitious, supportive and driven, nurturing and competitive. He does not sacrifice one dimension to exaggerate another. Marcus Aurelius balanced philosophical wisdom with imperial responsibility. He led the most powerful empire on earth while writing private meditations on virtue. He demonstrated that goodness and power need not oppose each other. Daniel chose goodness and abandoned power. He thought this made him more virtuous. It made him less attractive. The solution is not to become cruel or selfish. The solution is to reclaim the parts of yourself that create competitive value, to invest in growth that maintains or improves your relative position, to never assume your current standing is permanent. Schopenhauer would say that the will never rests. It always evaluates, always compares, always seeks better outcomes. The man who understands this stays in motion. The man who ignores this gets left behind. In the next segment, I reveal the fifth and final law, the one that separates men who lose women from men who keep them. The truth about the psychological foundation that makes everything else possible. There is one quality that separates men women leave from men women stay with. It is not kindness. Kind men get left every day. It is not success. Successful men get divorced constantly. It is not even the laws I have shared so far. Those laws describe symptoms. This law describes the cause. This is the fifth law, the law of sovereign identity. It states that lasting attraction requires a man whose sense of self does not depend on the relationship. His identity exists independently. His worth comes from within. His foundation cannot be shaken by her presence or absence. Schopenhauer called this the man who has overcome the world, not escaped it, overcome it. He participates in life without being enslaved by outcomes. He engages with relationships without making them the source of his existence. This is what Daniel lacked at his core. He appeared confident when they met, but his confidence was conditional. It depended on circumstances going well. When the relationship satisfied him, he felt worthy. When problems arose, he felt worthless. This conditionality revealed itself over time. His woman saw that his stability was borrowed, not owned, that his peace depended on her mood, that his identity rested on her approval, and she could not trust a foundation that unstable. Robert Greene identified this as the difference between seducers who capture hearts and those who merely attract attention. The great seducers throughout history shared one quality. They were complete within themselves. Their interest in others came from abundance, not lack. This abundance cannot be faked. Women detect false confidence within minutes. The man who performs certainty while feeling insecurity radiates mixed signals. His words say one thing, his energy says another, and energy always wins. Machiavelli wrote about the prince who rules himself before ruling others. He understood that external power flows from internal mastery. The man who cannot govern his own emotions cannot govern anything. Daniel never developed this internal mastery. He looked outward for validation. He sought approval from his career, his friends, his woman. When external sources provided it, he felt good. When they withheld it, he crumbled. His woman felt this dependency. Every time she saw him react to her moods, she lost respect. Every time she saw him seek her approval, attraction dimmed. Every time she saw him base his state on her behavior, she felt trapped. She did not want the power to destroy him. She wanted a partner who could stand regardless of what she did. Nietzsche described this as the self-creating individual, the man who determines his own values rather than accepting them from outside, the man who builds himself according to his own blueprint rather than society's expectations. This man cannot be shaken because his structure is internal. He does not need anyone's permission to feel worthy. He does not require anyone's love to feel complete. This does not mean isolation or coldness. The sovereign man can love deeply, but his love comes from fullness rather than emptiness. He offers his presence as a gift rather than seeking her presence as a need. Jung would recognize this as the individuated personality, the person who has integrated their shadow, reconciled their contradictions, and become fundamentally whole. This wholeness radiates outward as an energy that draws others in. Daniel never did this internal work. He went through life collecting external achievements instead of building internal structure. His degrees, his career, his relationship all represented attempts to prove worth rather than embody it. And when the relationship ended, he had nothing to stand on. His identity collapsed because it was never truly his. Albert Ellis would diagnose this as a core irrational belief. The belief that we need approval from others to be worthwhile. This belief creates dependence that undermines every relationship it touches. The rational alternative is recognizing that worth exists independently of opinions. That value comes from being, not from having or achieving. That no person's love or rejection changes who you fundamentally are. This sounds simple. It requires a lifetime to truly internalize. Schopenhauer spent decades developing his philosophy of detachment. He observed that attachment to outcomes creates suffering. The man who needs a specific result cannot find peace. Only the man who accepts whatever comes can maintain equanimity. In relationships, this translates to something profound. The man who can accept her leaving becomes the man she does not want to leave. His non-attachment paradoxically creates the conditions for attachment, because she knows she is chosen, not needed. She knows she is wanted, not required. She knows that his life would continue without her, which makes his choice to include her meaningful. Epictetus taught his students to distinguish between what they control and what they cannot. We control our own thoughts, choices, and actions. We do not control others' feelings, decisions, or behaviors. The good man who loses women confuses these categories. He tries to control her attraction through his behavior. He thinks if he just does the right things, she will respond the right way. But attraction cannot be controlled externally. It can only be influenced through who you become. Become the man with sovereign identity. Become the man whose foundation is internal. Become the man who does not need any specific outcome. And attraction follows naturally. This is Schopenhauer's deepest truth about why women leave good men. They leave men who are not truly good, who are good only as a strategy to get something, who perform goodness hoping for reward. They stay with men who are genuinely complete, who offer goodness from overflow, who remain standing regardless of what they receive. In the final segment, I will show you exactly how to build this foundation, the practices that develop sovereign identity, the shifts that transform your core, the path from the man who gets left to the man who gets chosen. Everything I have shared means nothing without application. Schopenhauer was not interested in theory alone. He wanted his philosophy to change how people lived. The 5 laws I revealed are not meant for intellectual entertainment. They are meant for transformation. So let me show you exactly how to become the man women do not leave. The first practice is daily confrontation with your own death. This sounds extreme. It is extreme. But Schopenhauer understood that mortality awareness creates proper priorities. When you know you will die, you stop wasting time on approval seeking. You stop caring what others think. You start living according to your own values. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every morning. He reminded himself that today might be his last. This awareness kept him focused on what truly mattered. It prevented him from trading his integrity for temporary validation. Spend 5 minutes each day contemplating your end. Not with fear, with clarity. Let this clarity burn away the need for approval that kills attraction. The second practice is building something beyond the relationship. Schopenhauer wrote that the man who has nothing but love will lose even that. You need work that matters, a mission that drives you, something that would continue giving your life meaning if she walked away tomorrow. This is not about backup plans. This is about psychological architecture. When your identity includes multiple pillars, the loss of one does not collapse the structure. When your worth comes from various sources, no single source can destroy you. Daniel made his woman his mission. This suffocated her and emptied him. He had nothing outside the relationship. When it ended, he had nothing at all. The third practice is embracing discomfort daily. Schopenhauer observed that comfort weakens the will. The man who avoids all difficulty becomes soft, and softness repels attraction. Nietzsche built his philosophy around this truth. He wrote that what does not kill us makes us stronger. Not automatically, but when we choose to engage difficulty with purpose. Cold showers, hard exercise, difficult conversations, challenges that stretch your capacity. These build the resilience that women unconsciously evaluate. They create the strength that cannot be faked. The fourth practice is developing genuine outcome independence. This is the practical application of Schopenhauer's detachment philosophy. You must learn to want things without needing them, to prefer outcomes without requiring them. Start small. When you send a text, release attachment to the response. When you make a request, accept any answer. When you hope for something, prepare for its opposite. This is not suppressing desire. It is expanding beyond desire's control. You still want. You just stop being enslaved by wanting. Epictetus spent years teaching this skill. He showed students how to distinguish between preference and need. You can prefer her love without needing it. You can want the relationship without requiring it for survival. This shift changes everything. She feels the difference between a man who wants her and a man who needs her. The first attracts. The second suffocates. The fifth practice is consistent self-development. Not for her. Not for attraction. For yourself. Because you have standards for who you want to become. Because settling into comfort offends your vision of your own potential. Read philosophy. Train your body. Master skills. Pursue goals. Become someone you respect regardless of external feedback. Robert Greene observed that the self-improving man remains attractive across decades. His relative position stays high because he keeps climbing. His mystery remains because he keeps revealing new depths. His resistance remains because he maintains standards. The sixth practice is honest self-examination. Jung called this shadow work. Schopenhauer called it self-knowledge. Whatever name you use, the process matters. What do you fear? What do you avoid? What parts of yourself have you rejected? The good man often suppresses his edge, his ambition, his dark side. This suppression creates the incompleteness that women sense. Integrate your shadow. Own your full nature. Become someone who has examined himself deeply and accepted what he found. This integration radiates as wholeness that attracts. The seventh practice is learning to let go. Schopenhauer wrote that attachment is the root of suffering. Not love. Love is beautiful. Attachment is grasping that chokes what it holds. Practice releasing in small ways. Give without expecting return. Share without needing acknowledgement. Love without demanding reciprocation. This builds the generosity of spirit that comes from overflow rather than need. Daniel grasped his woman tightly because he feared losing her. His grip communicated fear, not love. And she felt imprisoned rather than cherished. The man who can open his hand attracts precisely because he does not grasp. His willingness to let go demonstrates the abundance that clenching can never show. These 7 practices build the foundation that the 5 laws describe. They transform you from the good man who gets left into the complete man who gets chosen. Schopenhauer spent his entire life trying to understand human nature at its deepest level. What he found was not flattering to our illusions, but it was useful to those brave enough to apply it. You now have knowledge that most men will never possess. The question is what you will do with it. Will you dismiss it as cynical and return to strategies that have already failed? Will you understand it intellectually, but never apply it practically? Or will you use it to build something new? The woman who left Daniel did not leave a good man. She left an incomplete man who performed goodness without becoming truly whole. She left a man who needed her more than he needed his own development. You do not have to be that man. Starting today, you can build the foundation that makes leaving unthinkable. Not through manipulation, through genuine transformation. The shadow mind has shown you the truth. What you do with it is entirely up to you.